What's going on, everybody? Here we are on a Wednesday, and I've got a couple of things coming up that I'm pretty excited about. Number one, I'm excited because on Friday, I will be posting a video episode of a conversation with me and my dad. Yeah, I've had him on several times. A lot of people call him Coach, call him Midlife Dad. But my dad, Mike, is going to be on Friday. Now, we recorded that video over the weekend, finishing up the editing, and that will be posting here on Friday. So that is something to look forward to. It's a long conversation, a fun conversation. Talk about a lot of stuff. We talk about his new Grail cards after picking up a 53 tops mantle at the National. We talk about kind of some of his changes and opinions of things over the last couple of years when it comes to the hobby. A whole bunch of stuff. Again, it's a little over an hour, I think. And we had a good time, and I think that you will enjoy that. Also, we are wrapping up August. So as September starts, that's when I always do my video about my pickups from the previous month. So sometime next week, I'll be releasing my video of my August pickups. And I picked up several cards. Like some months I might have two, and some I might have one, or there have been months I've had none. But I picked up several in the month of August. So I'm excited to show all of those to you. And then on Saturday, I'll be releasing a video which will be some really good bargain deals from the 1950s under $50. So I like to kind of keep tabs on what's happening with cards, vintage cards from the 50s and the 60s in a price point that a lot of people can participate in. It's fun to see the deals, but it's also fun to see what's selling, what's not selling, what's going cheap, what's happening. So that's coming out on Saturday. So a lot planned over the next few days. That said, this is our Q&A day, and that means I get my opportunity to share my opinions with all of you when it comes to whatever it is you ask. And we have some super fun questions this week. Let's go ahead and take a look at that first one here. Why is eBay the standard for what a card is worth when the world can bid and the world doesn't show up to a card shop or show? Okay, I like this question. This is a fun question. Now, first of all, let's just talk about what is a price? What is a comp, right? The value of anything is what somebody is willing to sell it for and somebody is willing to buy it for. And in the stock market, there are buying and selling going on constantly, and that's why the prices of stocks are changing up and down all day long, is because that most recent transaction is constantly moving up and down and all around, and that's how we find out what something is worth. Just like when we comp a house, just like when we go to buy a used car, is we look to see what have they been selling for. So why eBay? That's a great question. Now, first, when we talk about cards and card prices, there have long been price guides, right? I mean, Beckett Magazine was like the universally accepted valuation of cards for many years. In fact, another thing that's happening this week that I didn't mention earlier is I'm going to be recording an episode on Dr. Beckett's podcast, and I will be on his channel, and I'll share a link to it when he posts it. But I'm going to be on recording with him, and he was the guy for determining prices. Now, when the Beckett was making prices, when they were posting prices, when they were publishing prices, I should say, it wasn't what does Dr. Beckett think the value of a card is. Oh, yeah, that guy had a good month, so the value goes up. Let's put the up arrow. That's not how it worked. What they did is they had a team of people who reached out nationwide, all over the place, and asked dealers, what are these cards all selling for? set by set, player by player. What did this card sell for this month? What did that card sell for this month? And that's how they got the prices. And they had a team of people that did this. And they had a lot of connections and a lot of people that they reached out to. And so what they were doing was they were finding private comps. Now, does that mean that there weren't other purchases happening in other card shops and at other card shows that weren't being included? Well, yeah, it was just kind of a poll of these cards. What are they kind of going for? What are they kind of selling for? And getting reports from that. And that's where the prices came from. And the thing about eBay is eBay constantly is, I mean, it is the number one place. It is where more transactions take place than anywhere, right? It's where more transactions are happening. So the most reliable way to figure out what things are selling for is to have a high volume, have a high number of samples. The higher the sample size, the more reliable. So you take any card and you go, where is it being transacted the most? And things are kind of being transacted the most on eBay. So a lot of people buy on eBay. A lot of people sell on eBay. The other thing that's good about eBay is it's not just dealers. See, at card shows, if we were only using card show prices for valuation, then the problem would be not everybody is going to be a dealer. Not everybody is going to set up at a table at a show and sell. And so this way, you have any random person, what are they willing to sell it for? Any random person, what are they willing to buy it for? Now, does that not include certain things? Yeah, there are people who don't buy and sell on computers. There are people who buy and sell in person only. There are people who only buy and only sell at card shows and card shops. So we need something. We need some reference for where there's a public record of a somewhat reliable place that transactions are happening on a somewhat regular basis. And that's one of the reasons why I just kind of take vintage cards, rarer cards more than vintage, rarer cards, with a kind of a grain of salt when you look at the comp. If there's a card that's a pop 8 and it hasn't sold in 3 years, the comp doesn't really mean anything now, right? Or even if it's a pop 30 and one has sold in the last 2 years and it was 2 months ago, is that what the price is? Well, that's what the most recent sale was, and at that moment, that's what those two people were willing to buy and sell it for. But things obviously are constantly in flux, because that doesn't mean that's what the card would sell for today. That's the same reason that one day you might have a card on eBay or any platform sell at one price and be a different price the next day, is because things are constantly moving, just like the stock market. So is it perfect? Absolutely not. It's not perfect. eBay is not perfect. eBay is not the be all and end all. And that's one of the reasons that I think some of these other price guide options are better. They're better. You know, Card Ladder. I've mentioned many times, I have Card Ladder and I have Market Movers. And I know a lot of people have opinions about each of them, and each of them have pros and cons. Which one do I use more? Depends on what it is that I'm doing. Sometimes it's Card Ladder and sometimes it's Market Movers, but I have a subscription to each. You know, and about a year ago, I mentioned that I had a thing through Market Movers where if you wanted to get a subscription, and there was a promo code, and the promo code was MidLife. And that's still active if it's something that you want to do. Some people pushed back and said, oh my gosh, now Greg is, working with Jeff Wilson and he's promoting products. No, I've been actually pretty good about not promoting things. I've actually had some people come to me and want to advertise on the channel, and I've not done it. Market Movers was different, because Market Movers, I liked the product and I went out to get the product and they said, hey, if you want to offer this to viewers, then you could do that. And I'm like, well, if I don't do it, they won't get 30% off. If I do it, they will get 30% off. So why not just share the promo code in case anybody wants market movers? But back to my point. My point is market movers, card ladder, whatever one you use or want to use, the thing that is better about those is it doesn't just use eBay, right? It uses any public sale. And the more public sales, the better, because the more volume, the more frequency, the more reliable the data and the comps actually are. If there's one house that sells on my street in the last 2 years, then is that super relevant to what the next one should be listed for? Not really. But if one has been selling every month for the last 12 months, all within the same range, you kind of have a good idea what the houses are worth. It's the same thing here. So I don't just go on eBay. I used to just go on eBay to find comps and prices. But now I use one of these other sites, whether it be Market Movers or Card Ladder are the two that I choose to use, because they include those, but then they also include Golden, and they include Heritage, and they include, REA and all of the different public auction sites they're linked to, and they include all of those in the comps. So is that a perfect science? No. Are there going to be sales that happen that are never public, that are never recorded? Of course. Does that mean that the price is 100% tied to what is happening on eBay? No. But it gives you a guide, and that's all a comp is. The comp is not a final answer of the price. It is just a guide to the approximate value, and it's some insight as to what some people recently sold for and somebody else recently agreed to buy it for. And that gives us at least some frame of reference to the potential value. But ultimately, it's what are you willing to sell something for, and what is someone willing to pay for it? That's really what matters at the end of the day.
Question: have you ever purchased a graded card and after you had it for a while noticed that it may have been overgraded? If so, did it bother you? What did you do about it? I ask because the very first graded card I ever bought ended up that way for me. It was a PSA 9, and I now have several graded versions of the same card. Based on eye appeal alone, I have an SGC 7 and a CGC 7.5 that look better in the slabs. I kept the card, but knowing its flaws sometimes bother me. It is a card of particular interest to me, so I have viewed many on eBay. I have found 2 other versions of it in PSA 10 that have clear registration issues. If they were regraded today by SGC, I don't think they could get higher than a 7. As you can imagine, I scrutinize the heck out of any card in a slab that I consider buying. It is so true, buy the card, not the grade. Thanks for all of your videos.
I think this is a fabulous question because I think this is a situation that many of us have found ourselves. We go out, we buy a card. It has a certain grade. We think it looks a certain way. Now, if you're buying it online, you don't have it in person, you don't have every angle of the pictures to look at. And so it's a little bit of a guess. And that's why the grade comes in handy, is because the grade gives you some, sense of assurance of what the card does and doesn't have on it. But again, it's a little bit of a blurry view of it. Now, has this ever happened to me? It has. And it's happened actually probably a handful of times. And in fact, very recently, I had this happen. Well, it didn't happen recently, but I decided how to handle it recently. So a couple of years ago, I had a PSA 6 1971 Wilt Chamberlain card. Love that card. It's one of my favorite Wilt Chamberlain cards. I even mentioned that in the last week or two that it was one of my favorite Wilt Chamberlain cards. So I had that card in a 6, but it was about 80-20 centering. That set is brutal to find well centered. So I said, the centering's driving me crazy. I'm going to get a different one. So I really want to have a nice copy of this because it's one of my favorite Wilt Chamberlain cards. So what I decided to do was I decided to sell my 6. I sold my 6 to buy either a really nice 6 or a really nice 5 or a really nice 7, something that was much better centered. It's really hard to find it 50-50, so 60-40 is a really well-centered copy of that card. So about a year ago, I decided here's one that came up, and I bought it in a 7. And it's not a cheap card. I mean, it's Wilt Chamberlain. It's early 1970s, and it's a PSA 7. So certainly not a cheap card, but it was a card that I wanted, and it was well-centered. It looked pretty good from the pictures, so I bought it. Well, when I got it home and I looked it over, it clearly had, it wasn't a surface issue, but it was a print issue with some of the color. And it bummed me out. As soon as I opened it and saw it, I was like, oh, this is a bummer. And so I kind of just put it away, put it with some of my other cards. I was like, I'm not going to think about this. I have the card still. It's still a 7. Now, again, which is another thing is, if there's an issue like that on a card and it's a 7, that means the rest of the card is probably pretty dynamite. If it got a 7 grade from PSA, especially a recent 7 grade, and it's got some fairly significant print defect, and it's still a 7, then yeah, it's super sharp. It's pretty decently centered, really vibrant colors. So I just tried to focus on that, but I could not get it out of my head. This issue was bugging me. And so I thought about it, and I was like, well, if I sell it, I'm going to lose money. Because, you buy it at a price, you pay sales tax, you pay shipping, and then you sell it, and then you got to pay, eBay fees or whatever auction house fees. I put it out in a couple of card shows that I set up at, didn't sell. So I just kind of was like, I think I just need to rip off the Band-Aid. And that's what it is. It's ripping off a Band-Aid. And sometimes what happens is our pride gets in our way and we go, I'm not going to lose money on a card. No. I paid this amount for that card. So that card, I think I don't remember what I paid, $285, $290, something like that for it. Well, and then I put it up for sale for about $275 because the price of it has come down a little. And then I'm going to have to pay eBay fees. And then I'm going to have to, so I'm going to end up probably netting $240 out of it. Well, I sold it. And I sold it actually this past month. And that's one of the things I don't talk about a lot on the channel. And I don't really talk a lot about what I've been selling. I talk a lot about what I've been buying, but not so much what I've been selling. People go, man, this guy's funds just keep regenerating. No, it's not that they're regenerating. In a lot of cases, it's that I let some things go. Well, this last month, I let that Wilt Chamberlain go because of this issue on the card was just kind of driving me nuts. So with the question at hand, which is, have you ever bought a card that was overgraded? Yeah, you know what? I bought it at 7 prices. And then I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to hopefully get 7 prices for it. But I'm going to have to pay all those fees, and I'm going to definitely lose money. So the question is it worth? So let's just say I lost $45 on the deal from buying it and then selling it. So I lost $45 on the deal. That's not the worst thing that's ever happened to me. If that was the worst thing that ever happened to me, then I'm doing really well. But I lose $45, but is it worth $45 to have a card in your collection that bums you out whenever you look at it? Because every time I looked at the card, I'm like, oh man, can't believe I missed that. The picture must not have shown it. I bought it. It's not worth it. Just rip off the Band-Aid, cut it loose, send it free to someone else who may not have an issue with that, and move on. So, have I bought a card that's overgraded? I think we all have. Have I been disappointed? Yes, I have. And what have I done about it? in every single case, every single time, I've ended up selling the card, losing a little bit of money. I ripped off the Band-Aid, but I didn't have that scar, that thing that was driving me crazy and bugging me in my collection anymore. And sometimes it's just not worth it. Sometimes it's okay. You're not going to win on every deal. So sometimes you're going to lose, and that's okay, because you're probably going to win more than you're going to lose. So sometimes you just got to take your medicine. That's what I did on the Wilt Chamberlain.
Question for you, Greg. I'm a guy that looks for a very particular grade. Not a high grade, but a particular grade. I have many reasons for this, but mostly just me being insane. This said, I have SGC slabs with some amazing cards inside, but would look nicer framed in a PSA, as the red rectangle makes the cards in this particular set pop beautifully. If I wanted to make a small investment for a consistent look to all my slabs, this would require me to cross over some SGCs to PSAs. Don't tell Mangini. I would die if they changed my grade, whether down or up, when making the crossover. Do you feel that the merging of SGC and PSA companies will encourage PSA to keep the grade SGC already determined for the card? Or do you think it's just as much of a gamble as it was when they were two companies that were competitors?
All right. I love the question, partly because you're acting like I don't know who you are, Dean, and you're acting like I don't know what grade the cards are, twos. I actually think it's pretty cool that you like having two graded cards. And I actually think twos are kind of a sweet spot, especially with vintage cards, because you kind of get the most bang for your buck. And I've talked a lot about the big range that a 1 can be and even a 1.5 can be. But when you get to a 2, it means it's better than that whole range. It's a good place to target, especially for rare cards, especially for old cards. Now, there are a couple parts to your question. So let me first answer the part about, do I think that PSA will give more validity to an SGC holder than they used to? So here's been my experience. Time and time again, people that I've talked to, experiences that I've had, if you try to cross over from SGC to PSA, they will rarely give it, they'll almost never give it a higher grade. And sometimes they'll give it the same grade, and a lot of the times they'll want to drop the grade. For whatever reason, PSA likes being thought of as grading tougher than everyone else. So a card that has like a 2 from SGC is not that likely to go to a 2.5 or a 3 with PSA. I'm not saying it's impossible, but my experience and just feedback and conversations I've had with people, that's not really what PSA does. Do I think now that collectors owns both, that suddenly PSA will respect SGC's grades? I don't think it's impossible. I don't expect PSA to do that. I think that PSA likes being known as the red carpet company, the premium brand. Whether or not they are is a different story, but they like being thought of as that. They like being the upper echelon, the first class brand, and everything else is everything else. And I think one of the reasons that PSA and SGC are remaining separate is so that you have the option of what they consider the premium brand of PSA, and then the coach class being SGC. And you're like, how could you say that? Well, look no further than the National. If you went in the room, in the main room there, you literally walk in the door and you're in front of the PSA booth, and it's massive. And the area around it is carpeted. It's red carpeted, literally. It is gigantic, and it is like a premium showcase. SGC was all the way in the other corner, the back corner of the secondary room. It could not have been, it literally couldn't have been further from PSA or literally or closer further from the entrance. I mean, if collectors really valued both equally and wanted them to be seen as equals, then they would have had a collector's booth with a PSA side and an SGC side, but that's not what they're wanting. They're clearly trying to position PSA as the premium red carpet brand and SGC is the coach. That's what they're doing. Now, will they continue to do that? I don't know. So I don't see PSA suddenly caving to, SGC grades and saying, yeah, we're all one and the same. I don't see that happening. I could absolutely, let me back up. I don't see that happening soon. Now, on the opposite end of that, I know of a lot of people who have submitted cards in PSA holders for crossover grades. So let me back up and explain what I'm talking about here. I could send a card into SGC and say, hey, SGC, I want this to be in an SGC holder. Right now it's in a PSA holder. And they will look at it in the holder and they will say, yep, you know what? We will honor this too, and we will give it an SGC too, and they'll put it in an SGC slab with an SGC serial number with an SGC 2. Or what they could do is get that PSA 2 and go, sorry, man, this would not get a 2 if we were to grade it. So we won't do that. And what you can do as a customer is say, I would accept it all the way down to a 1.5. So SGC, if you think it's a 1.5, slab it as a 1.5. If you think it's a 2, 2's fine. And anything up, that would be fine as well. So you can set a minimum grade on the crossover. So I know of a lot of people who have submitted PSA slabs to SGC for crossovers, gotten the same grade, and in many cases, gotten a higher grade. I'm not talking about cracking it out of a PSA slab, taking the raw card and submitting it to SGC. I'm talking about submitting a card to SGC in the PSA slab and getting the grade that would be higher than it was in the PSA slab. SGC seems to be willing to ignore what the previous grade is. PSA does not seem as willing to do that. So SGC seems to be more accepting of PSA grades than PSA is of SGC. So with all of that said, I said a lot, and I haven't really gotten to your main question. What do I think about this? Here's what I think. I think because you're going from SGC to PSA, I don't think they're going to bump many of your grades. I don't think you're going to take your SGC 2, Dean, and put it into a PSA 4. I don't think they're going to do that, just because that's not historically what SGC slabs do when they're submitted for crossover to PSA. So here's what I think you do. I think you submit them. And again, this is because I know you want them to match. I know you have an artistic eye. I know you're a graphic design type guy. I know that eye appeal matters. I get why you want to do what you're doing. If you're going to do this, here's the suggestion. Take your SGC slabs, submit them to PSA. Tell them I want a minimum grade of a 2. Okay? And then that way, if it's going to get a 1 or a 1.5, they won't change the slab. They'll leave it in the SGC slab. Then, knowing that PSA regularly does not bump higher than SGC did, I don't think many of those that they don't on. So I think they're going to go, nope, sorry, this one stays in an SGC 2. Some, they'll go, yes, that would be a PSA 2. And they would cross it. I don't think very many are going to go to a 2.5 or a 3. So let's say worst case scenario for you, and they bump it. So now you have a card that was an SGC 2, and they bump it to a PSA 3. I actually think that's a good thing for you, because then what you could do is you could sell the card in the PSA 3, which would be worth a lot more than the card that you bought in the SGC 2. And then you sell it, you buy a new copy of the card in a PSA 2 holder, and you have extra money. So I don't think you lose here if you do this. So I think the answer is you submit them for crossover to PSA. You put the minimum grade at the 2 grade. They're probably not going to bump any. If they do bump one and it doesn't have the 2, which I know you want the 2, I get it. You sell it. You buy a 2, and then you keep the extra cash. There are going to be some cards, though, they're going to say, we aren't going to honor this. This isn't a PSA 2. It's only an SGC 2. They're going to do that as they thumb their nose at you. So just be prepared for that. But I think a lot of them will cross to a 2, and hopefully a couple of them bump, and then you can sell them, buy the 2, keep the extra cash. That's what I would do if I was in your shoes, and you really, really, really wanted them to be in PSA slabs.
Hey, Greg, future question. Dave and Adam's Card World is about 15 minutes from my house. They are an absolute monster for sales. I once considered myself lucky to be so close and have that type of selection. I have not been there in years, though, since I began collecting vintage only. I stopped in the other day to pick up some packs of modern basketball. To my shock and annoyance, I found that they no longer sell packs. What in the world? Boxes or cases only. I know the card collecting has evolved into breaks and mass openings, but doesn't it seem like that squeezes out the traditional collectors? I feel like I've been cast aside for the big money spenders. Do you think that the bigger shops like D&A just don't care about the little guy anymore? I mean, it sure seems like they don't. And why would they when they are making the bank that they are? Just curious as your opinion.
Oh, I like this question. I think I might be able to give you some insight. I don't think this is about card shops not caring about the little guy or the average regular collector and them only caring about people that buy cases and do breaks. I don't think that's what's happening. Now, here's what recently happened for me. So for the last 20 years, every year on Christmas, I give my brother a bunch of gifts, and one of the gifts has always been a couple of packs of Topps baseball cards. I've been doing it for a long time. And some years, especially like during the pandemic years, it was very hard to find some Topps packs at somewhere like a Target or something. You know how like they have the hanger packs where there's a couple of packs in the little plastic thing? It was hard to find them. So what I did is I went to some of our local shops. So I don't go to local card shops a lot because most local card shops are selling modern stuff, which isn't really my thing. Plus, I don't know. I just haven't. I probably should go more than I do. Well, I went into one of the local card shops and I said to them, hey, yeah, I just want to buy a couple packs of baseball Topps. And they said, we don't sell packs. Very similar thing to what you're describing. And I'm like, why wouldn't you sell packs? Are you out? And he goes, no, I stopped selling packs 6 months ago. I only sell boxes. And I go, why? I don't understand. He said, as soon as they started doing boxes where there is a guaranteed number of autos in them or guaranteed number hits, he goes, what would happen was people would ask me, hey, have any of the autos been pulled yet? Hey, have any of the hits been pulled yet? And then if somebody had been in the day before and bought 3 packs and 2 of them were the 2 auto packs, then there's no more autos in the whole box and nobody would want to buy the rest of the packs. So this guy's telling me this, and he said, yeah, so this guy came in and he said, hey, have any of the autos been hit yet? And I said no, because as far as he knew, they hadn't. And the guy bought like 5 packs, and packs aren't cheap. And he bought like 5 packs, and he didn't hit any of the hits, none of the autos, nothing. And he goes, the guy wanted to fight me. He wanted to fight me because he thought I was lying. He's like, you're lying to me. They've already been pulled. You're acting like they haven't been pulled, but you knew that they were. You just wanted me to buy these packs, but you knew there would be nothing in them. And he was really upset. He said, so from that point forward, I stopped selling packs. And it blew my mind. I was like, that is a really interesting side effect of having a set number of hits in a box. As soon as they started saying, yeah, 2 of these packs are going to have an auto. Well, as soon as the 2 packs had been pulled with the 2 autos, then nobody would want the rest of the packs. It's sort of like, when you look, when you're at in Las Vegas and you see somebody on a slot machine for like 2 hours and it's just eating money, just eating it, and it's just no winning. You're like, this thing's it's gotta burst soon, right? And then they leave, and you're like, I'm gonna hit that machine because it hasn't hit in 2 hours. It's gotta hit soon, right? It's like, I remember as a kid one time I was at a card shop, and it was 87 Donruss was the box. And there was like 1 or 2 packs gone out of the box so far. So, the guy pays for his pack of 87 Donruss. He goes in, he digs in, pulls out his pack, opens his pack in the shop, hits the Mark McGwire. Now, the 87 Donruss, the Mark McGwire was like, that, at the time, that was like the hit. Well, the chances of me buying a pack of the 87 Donruss at that point went way down because I knew that the box probably didn't have 2 or 3. It probably had 1 or 2, and one of them just got pulled out. So what are the chances of another one coming out? So I think that it's actually a side effect. Now, I'm not trying to defend anybody. I'm just telling you my perspective. I think that's what's happening is because there are a certain number of hits, and when you start breaking up the box, and people might know when it has or hasn't had a hit happen, I think that this is a side effect of that, is people just sell the whole box or nothing because of that. I think that's what's happening here. I don't think it's that card shops don't care about the little guy. I think it's that card shops don't want to have to answer for the person buying packs who is upset about what may have already been pulled or not.
Greg, thank you again, my friend. My question, what do you think about a card that is somewhat off-center, top to bottom, versus somewhat off-center, left to right? Personally, off-center, top to bottom, within reason, can look just as good as dead-centered to me. I'm told I was dropped on my head as a baby, but I am more sensitive to off-center, left to right. I state my opinion only to help you out, so you can make sure that you have the correct opinion also.
Okay, that's Adam. You guys know Adam. Has an awesome channel, Vintage Sanctuary. Adam is an absolutely awesome guy. Like, one of the best guys in the hobby, one of the most positive guys that I've met in the hobby. I wish I spent more time with him at the National. We spent a little bit of time together. I wish I'd spent more time with him because he is a really, really great guy. If you've not subscribed to his channel, you have to subscribe to his channel. So to answer your question, Adam, almost always I agree with you. Side-to-side centering matters way more to me than top-to-bottom centering. I don't know why it's more noticeable, but it certainly seems more noticeable. I think it's because at times there are designs at the top of cards and at the bottom of the cards that go beyond what the side borders are. Usually the side borders are very prominent, and then the top border, the bottom border might have like a nameplate or like a team logo or something on there that covers part of what the quote unquote border is. So it makes it so it's harder to see that it's off center. You know, a lot of modern cards are that way, where I can't even tell side to side. Is that how it's supposed to be? It is definitely more noticeable side to side, especially with vintage cards. But there are some sets that have like a full border all the way around, like the 1950 Bowman set. 1950 Bowman has a full border all the way around. The card is basically square. And because of the design, if it's off center by a lot top to bottom, it's also very noticeable. But then there are other years where it's just a lot less noticeable. Like the 53 Tops. It's much harder, I think, to tell if a 53 Tops card is off center than a 1950 Bowman card is off center. So for the most part, yes, I totally agree that the side to side centering affects me way more than the top to bottom centering. And even in the sets where there is a clear border on the top and the bottom, it still doesn't bother me as much. It kind of feels like, you know, it's kind of like sliding when it's not square and it's off center side to side. It kind of feels like it's like heavy. It's like one of those, you know, scales where you have the weights and it kind of goes like this. It kind of feels like it's more dramatic that way. Is that the right answer? Well, I don't know about that, but I'm always happy to agree with you on things, Adam. So if that's your answer, and I pretty much agree with you, not exclusively, but I pretty much agree with you, I'm happy to be on the same team as I am with the Vintage Sanctuary team. So for whatever that's worth, I hope that I helped your cause in that. But again, if somebody doesn't mind centering, there's that, you know? I mean, I don't know. It's all in the eye of the beholder, right? That's what we're starting to say more and more and more. It's all about whether you like the card, and that's the answer at the end of the day. For me, side to side definitely matters a whole heck of a lot more. All right. That said, that was our fifth and final question. If you have submitted a question and I haven't used it, there's a very good chance that it's still on the list. What I do each week is whenever somebody submits a question, I add it to a list, and then it just kind of slowly moves up until I use it. If you asked a question 3 or 4 weeks ago and I haven't used it, chances are something went sideways. Like maybe it got caught in a YouTube filter in the comments section or something. I don't know, because I'm not skipping questions. I'm just adding them to the list, and then they're just working their way up. So right now, I think in the list of remaining questions after this week, I think there's about 7 in there. So questions that would be submitted this week are, 2 weeks from now is probably when they would hit. So don't hesitate if you have a question. I look forward to answering them. I genuinely, it is a huge compliment to me when people take the time to submit a question and want to hear my opinion on something that you're interested in with anything having to do with cards. And again, these are my opinions. Doesn't mean they're good ones. Doesn't mean that those opinions are right. It's just kind of where I'm coming from. And have I ever changed my opinions? Of course I have. Have I ever been wrong with one of my opinions? I'm certain. My wife, I'm sure my wife can attest that my opinions are wrong from time to time. That said, don't hesitate to ask your questions in the comments below this week.